Tower of London, England. The Tower of London has always been a place of shadows, a fortress where the weight of history presses down like a shroud. Its ancient walls have witnessed centuries of blood, betrayal, and death, but some say that not all who enter ever truly leave. It was a chilly autumn evening in 1890 when Thomas Drayton, a young historian with a fascination for England's darker past, arrived at the tower. He had been granted special permission to spend the night there, researching the execution sites and the infamous Bloody Tower, where two young princes had vanished without a trace centuries before. The tower had long been rumored to be haunted. Guards whispered of strange sounds in the night, phantom footsteps, doors creaking open on their own, and voices that echoed through the empty halls. But Thomas, a man of reason, scoffed at such tales. Ghosts were for the superstitious, not for men of learning like himself. As the last of the evening light faded, Thomas made his way to the Bloody Tower. The wind howled through the narrow streets of the fortress, rattling the iron gates and sending shivers down his spine. He entered the tower, his lantern casting flickering shadows on the stone walls. The room where the princes had slept before their disappearance was cold and bare, save for a small, wooden bed. Thomas stood there for a moment, imagining the fear the boys must have felt before they vanished. According to legend, they had been murdered by their uncle, Richard III, who sought the crown for himself. Their bodies had never been found, but their restless spirits were said to haunt the tower. Thomas set his lantern on the floor and began to examine the room. He ran his fingers over the ancient stones, looking for any signs of hidden passages or secret chambers. He had been working for nearly an hour when the temperature in the room dropped suddenly. His breath formed in clouds before him, and the lantern flickered as though struggling against an unseen force. A faint noise echoed from the hallway outside. At first, it was barely audible, like the sound of footsteps on distant stairs. Thomas froze, listening intently. The footsteps grew louder, coming closer. He turned toward the door, heart pounding. His rational mind insisted that it was just one of the guards making their rounds, but the tower was supposed to be empty at this hour. "Who's there?" he called, his voice breaking the oppressive silence. No answer. The footsteps stopped just outside the door. Thomas stood frozen, his eyes fixed on the doorway, expecting someone, or something, to appear. But the door remained closed. Suddenly, the room filled with a low, guttural whisper, like the wind rushing through a narrow passage. But this was no natural sound. It was a voice that hissed words he could not understand. Then, from the shadows in the corner of the room, something moved. A dark figure slowly took shape, emerging from the gloom. It was small, like a child, but its features were wrong. Its face was gaunt, eyes sunken, skin a deathly pale. It stared at Thomas, its lips curling into a grotesque smile. He backed away, his heart racing. The lantern flickered again, and the room plunged into darkness. Thomas scrambled for the door, but it wouldn't budge. Panic gripped him as the whispering grew louder, closer. And then, suddenly, the childlike figure was right in front of him. Its cold fingers grazed his arm, and an icy chill shot through his body. Thomas gasped, his breath stolen by an invisible force. The whispers filled his ears, growing into a cacophony of voices, all angry, all accusing. "You did this," they seemed to say. "You brought us back." Thomas stumbled, falling to the floor. The last thing he saw before the darkness swallowed him was the figure's twisted face, its eyes gleaming with malice. When the guards found him the next morning, Thomas was sitting in the corner of the room, his face pale and his eyes wide with terror. He couldn't speak, couldn't move. They said he was mad, driven insane by the spirits of the tower. But as they carried him away, one of the guards noticed something chilling. Two small handprints, as if made by a child, pressed into the dust on the floor near where Thomas had fallen. The Tower of London had claimed another soul, lost to the whispers of the past, forever trapped within its haunted walls.